Hey everyone, welcome back. So today I'm doing something a little bit different. I wanted to talk to you about how to choose guitar gear, music gear, guitar pedals, that kind of thing. And I also want to help you try to avoid getting the wrong equipment. So there's a lot of brands out there. There's so many choices. Frankly, I feel it's a little overwhelming. And right now, we're in the holiday buying frenzy. So I don't know if you're like me, you're getting inundated with marketing left and right. It's just spraying me everywhere with ads. So how do you choose what to get? So before I start, I want to say a couple of things. Everything I'm about to say is my opinion. It's not a hard fact. I am often wrong and will continue to be so. So please keep all of this in mind when you listen to me. I'm focusing mostly on guitar pedals for this video, but frankly, I think you could apply these things I'm going to talk about to any gear that you may or may not want to buy. The main reason I want to share this with you is I hope I can help you avoid getting the wrong gear, because getting the wrong gear can slow you down, it can get in the way, it can cost you money that, you would otherwise spend on something that would help you instead of hinder you. So I broke this up into a very YouTube-friendly format. There's 5 tips to consider when choosing some guitar gear. So here we go. So my first tip is the newest gear isn't necessarily the best gear. I have a lot of pedals, and of course I haven't tried every pedal under the sun because I can't afford to, but I pretty much know which one is my favorite. So if some mean person stole all my pedals and left me with one and let me choose that pedal, I'd pick the El Capistan. It's a tough choice, but I'd pick the El Capistan. Why is that? Because it sounds so damn good. It's got a reverb built into it. It has a looper built into it. That's my favorite looper of all time. It's just my favorite pedal. Really, at the end of the day, it is. I bought that thing in 2013, and I don't even have the V2. I have the V1 because I don't need the V2. Like, the V1 is more than adequate. It's just a great, great pedal. I have another delay pedal that I really love, and it's called the Brig, and it's brand new. I bought it this year, so I've only had that for a few months. That thing sounds amazing as well. Now, is the Brig better than the El Capistan? Does the Brig sound better than the El Capistan? I have no idea if it does or not. They both sound great, and they both sound a little different. Does the Brig have more features because it's newer? No, it has different features. So I guess what I'm saying is the Brig is not inherently better than the El Capistan because it's newer. So don't be pulled in by the newest pedal just because it's new. That doesn't matter. Instead, consider features first. That's really what should be guiding you into the gear that you get. All right, for the second tip, expensive doesn't always mean better, but sometimes it does. So this is a really big one, and it took me a while to figure this out. It's very easy to get pulled into the idea that a $400 reverb pedal is going to magically give you this insane, amazing sound that you can't otherwise achieve with a cheaper pedal. So to illustrate this, I currently have 2 gain pedals that I use all the time now, and they're my 2 favorites. I swap them in and out depending on my mood. So one of them is a King of Tone. That's over $300. The other one is a Nobels ODR1, and that was like $99. I'm not going to minimize how much I love the King of Tone. It sounds very, very good. I love it. I love it. I love it. I've had it for years. I'll never get rid of it. But the Nobels ODR1 also sounds very good, and sometimes I prefer using that. So is the King of Tone better than the Nobels? Sometimes it is. It just depends on the sound I want. It depends on what amp and what guitar I'm using, and how I'm feeling that day, to be honest. I sometimes have a hard time remembering this, because many times in the past, I've purchased cheaper gear and it was a big mistake. So for a while, I always told myself, just get the most expensive thing you can. I'm just saying that a more expensive pedal or guitar piece of gear isn't inherently better than a cheaper one. So keep that in mind. It's really easy to fall into the marketing of companies when they're trying to sell you something that's more expensive. And sometimes the cheaper piece of gear is just as good as the more expensive, depending on everything else you're doing. So the third tip is do your research. Don't make an impulse buy. And this seems really obvious, but it actually can be very hard to do. So ideally, the best way to choose, let's say, a guitar pedal is to actually spend time with it and play it. The best thing that could happen is if you're lucky, you have a friend who will lend you the pedal or the gear you're considering. That's really the best way to evaluate it. But if you can't try it out physically, there are other ways to evaluate these things. One thing I do is when I'm doing this research, I'll find photos of what some of my favorite guitarists like to use. And that's sometimes helpful. Your mileage may vary a bit on that because 9 times out of 10, if I'm researching, like what pedals a guitarist is using, I find a bunch of photos of a ratty old pedal board comprised of like 5 beat up Boss pedals. And that doesn't necessarily get me what I want because that musician may not be using that pedal board in the studio. So, However, it does remind you to always look at Boss pedals when you're choosing out effects because they make great, great pedals. So personally, I find YouTube to be incredibly helpful in this regard, and I'll often turn to some of my favorite channels to get insight or advice. Find a channel you trust, find a channel you resonate with, and you just have to do the best you can. But doing the research is incredibly important. You don't want to skip that step and just make an impulse buy. Okay, so the fourth tip is I think you need to consider the user interface, and this is a big one. This is one that took me a while to figure out. Okay, so I started heavily getting into guitar pedals about maybe 10 years ago. But as you can likely tell, I'm far, far older than that, and I've bought a lot of gear over the years. Okay, so let me share with you my journey here, and all the mistakes that I made. So when I first learned guitar, I started out using effects pedals. And I started out with 3 pedals. I had a distortion, a flanger, and a delay. And I spent a lot of time with just those 3 pedals. I feel like starting that way had a very fundamental impact on how I create music. So over the years, I've gone back and forth between multi-effects units and pedals, and once I stopped playing live, that's kind of when modeling started coming into its own, and there were some really cool units that caught my eye. So I went ahead and sold all my pedals because I just thought that was the way to go, and I got a Line 6 Pod HD 500 unit. It was this big metal floor unit with expression pedals built into it, and I was just blown away by the possibilities that this thing offered. It had all these virtual amps, virtual cabs, had every effect under the sun, and everything was mappable to that expression pedal. So it was just really, really exciting to have such a powerful tool at my disposal. And I thought that was gonna really open up new possibilities for myself. Fast forward 3 years, and I'm sitting at my desk, and I'm thinking about how I almost never play guitar anymore. I actually remember this day very clearly. During that time, I would plug into this Line 6 unit, and I never really loved how it sounded, ironically enough. And then I would play around with the patches a lot to try to get a good sound out of it. And the user interface, I just didn't love it. I found it clunky and cumbersome. And so I would always turn on my computer and plug a USB cable into the back of it and program the patches. And I kept doing that. And I realized that by doing that, I realized at this one moment, I had been completely taking myself out of a creative mindset. And I was swapping myself over to a more technical mindset. And by doing so, I was destroying my enjoyment of playing guitar. I don't like playing guitar when my mind is in a technical mindset. It's not fun anymore. So I sold the Line 6 and I decided, okay, I'm just going to go back to basics and I'm going to start over from, the little room. And I'm going to get some pedals and some basic pedals and just start playing around with them. And then I stumbled upon that pedal show on YouTube, and I had no idea what was going on in the pedal world at the time, and my mind was blown away. So saved up a little bit, and very shortly I had a timeline, I had a Big Sky, I had an El Capistan, and everything changed. Everything changed. I fell in love with guitar again. So I've realized that I don't like any sort of screen to be on my pedals, to be honest. Like, I don't like any on there at all. It just pulls me into another space entirely. Like the timeline and the big sky, they have that little LED screen. That's fine. That doesn't bother me. And I'm not some sort of Luddite. Like, we always had electronics and computers and video games in the house when I grew up. I'm on the computer a lot for work, and I kind of think that's the reason I react this way. So I'm telling you all this because I think it's very important to consider your own creative process. You don't want your gear to pull you out of your creative space. So for some people, a count to 5 might do that. It might be too much. For some people, an eventide H9 might do that. That's one reason I don't have one of those. The screen scares me. It just scares me off, you know? For me, a multi-effects unit is just my kryptonite. I just can't, I don't like it. I don't want a pedal to do too many things. It interrupts my creative process. I prefer the pedal to do 1 or 2 things and it to be fairly straightforward and simple as to what it does. So be aware of your own preferences and be aware of how your own mind works in this regard. It's super important. This is going to keep you from wasting time and money like I did, and especially time, because time is so precious. All right, finally I have one more tip. Number 5, it's think about context, how you will use this gear that you want to buy. What settings will you use it in? That makes a difference. Now, a studio or a home setting is very, very different from a practice room setting. That's different from a live setting as well. So if you're more into playing live, you might not need a delay that has 20 algorithms if the nuance of those 20 algorithms is going to be completely lost because your band plays so loud that no one's going to hear it. You might just need a delay that's easy to tap a tempo into and has simple controls, presets, or whatever. Maybe it's more optimized for live performance. Okay, let me give you an example. So let's say I want a looper for a studio situation. Well, the first thing that comes to my mind is a blooper. I would think of that immediately. But what if I need a looper for a live band situation? Do I really want to bring my expensive blooper pedal with its tiny little switches into my band room and to gigs where it's going to be abused? It's going to be covered with sweat. Someone's going to step on it. I'm going to drop it and someone's going to spill beer on it. Or should I bring a much cheaper but very capable TC Electronic Ditto looper, which is built like a submarine, but it probably has fewer features? Well, for me, I'm going to choose the Ditto every time if I'm building a board for live performance. Now, obviously, some gear serves to inspire you and to enable your creativity. That is absolutely critical, and that can't be forgotten when we're thinking about this. But if I was personally putting together a board for a band or a live situation, I'd choose very different pedals than if I was setting that up for a studio situation. Now, I'm not saying everyone needs different gear for their studio and completely different gear for a live band. I'm just simply saying think about it when you're choosing what you want to buy. So if you saved up $5,000 because you've had this dream rare guitar that you've wanted and it costs $5,000, that's great. However, is it going to break your heart if that thing gets scratched? If it does, maybe that's not the best guitar for you to have when you're playing live, if you're doing live performance. Maybe that $5,000 should be spent on other things and you get a guitar that is cheaper and is not going to make you cry that night when you inevitably bump it into something or scratch it. So that's what I'm talking about when I say think about the context. So that's it, everyone. Those are the tips I have for how to buy gear and not make the mistakes I did. I'm not sure if this video is going to help you out, but I've been wanting to chat about this for a while, and I figured right before the holiday season would be a really good time. So I'm curious what people will say in the comments. Please let me know what you think. And if you like the video, hit the like button and the subscribe button because all that stuff really helps. But thank you very much to all the people around the world that watch my channel. I'm very, very grateful. And I hope you all find peace and happiness and comfort during this time. I really, really do. I have a couple more videos planned, including some music before the end of the year. So please watch out for those. And until then, take care, my friends. Thanks so much.